Hi, it's Paul again, and today we're going to cover some UV basics for polygons. So far we did some UV work in the NURB space, which is pretty limited. You really can't do much other than translate the texture across the surface. And of course, you really only have a single face in a surface, whereas with polygons you can map to multiple faces. Now when you create a UV layout, however, everything is going to be within that object, so I'll show you what I mean in a second here. So let's go ahead and create a polygon cube. So a polygon cube should be like the simplest thing to map, and let's take a look at it. Let's scale it up here and make it bigger. Okay, so there's our cube. And so when we go into our UV editor here, and we'll go to Window, UV Editor, you should be familiar with this by now. So we get this layout. It's sort of automatically laid out pretty nicely. So let's take a look at what we can do now with this UV. This is the simplest route, so I'm going to show you how to do this first, and then we'll go into how to edit more complicated UV sets. So the first thing we want to do is export this. We already have a pretty good layout with this. It's not necessarily space efficient, and we'll get into that later, how we can kind of move shells around and possibly use more of the space, since there are 6 cubes here and we seem to have a lot of extra space here. But we want everything to fit within this square here. So let's go ahead and go to Polygons and say UV Snapshot. So what the UV Snapshot window will do is it will allow you to create an image file of your UV space. And so from that file, then you can go into Photoshop or whatever image editor you want, and then you can sort of start laying out a texture without sort of guessing where it's going to be on each face. So let's change this to, let's just change it to something that Photoshop can read. Now there is a plugin for Photoshop that will read IFF files, but I'm just going to leave this as, I'm going to make this actually a TIFF file. And let's make this bigger, so let's make it like 512 by 512. Now that's a pretty small texture when you think about it by today's standards, but it should be good enough to do something like we're about to do. So let's go ahead and say OK, and we'll go ahead and say OK. And so now it's saved this into my directory here. And I should have probably saved a separate project first, but it's saving it into the last project I did. So let's take a look at that, where that is. So if we go to our Maya projects, wherever you store your Maya projects, and mine is going to be in my documents folder. So I have Maya projects here, and in this particular case I saved out a file to my advanced NURBS folder, and it outputs it to the images directory. So you see I have this out UV, and now I can open that within Photoshop. And so now I'll be able to actually have a guideline for sort of painting this UV layout. So this is kind of the simplest form. I didn't have to do any actual editing to the UV space itself, but I'm going to show you how to take this UV snapshot now and paint it into something. So we have sort of one layer here. I'm just going to go ahead and create another layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a fill, and let's do I'm just going to do, actually let's pick a nice color here. I'll pick like a dark red or something, and I'll go ahead and say edit fill with the foreground. Okay, so now I really can't see what's underneath here, so let's move the background. Actually, let's make this, since this is the background is locked, but we can unlock it and then move it over, and I'll just change this to screen. So what screen does is it takes the black out, and then we just see the white. So we're going to lock this for now, and then we can go ahead and so I would lock that. I won't make any changes to that layer. I want to basically work on this layer. So really what I want to do is, in this case, I'm just going to make a set of dice. So let's just go ahead and I'll just select with the circle. I'm going to go right in the center here. Try to be right in the center. And then I'm going to fill that with a white. And I'll say foreground color, since the foreground color is white. And so, now it's on there. It might not be perfectly centered or anything, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But what I could do is now come to the next one and do 2. So now I'm doing 2. So there's now 2 dice, the number 2 on the dice. And the next I'll make 3. So I'll make 1, 2, 3. So this is a good example because I'm knowing which side of the dice I'm designing. And now let's do 4 here. So what I'm doing is I'm holding the Option and Command key to move that selection and make a copy of it in Photoshop. And now I'll make 5. So actually in this case I might want to just take 4 there, and it's not really perfectly centered here, so I might want to make that for some reason let's see, I'm going to have to turn off fixed ratio here, but I might want to just recenter this, and again I'm holding Option Command, so I'm making a copy and not taking away the background. And so Option Command, I'll go back one, and now I'll do another one here, and let's just go ahead and I'm just going to eyeball this. It's not too crucial. If I was really trying to do this a better job, I probably would create layers for each one. So there's the 5, and then the last one will be the 6. So I'm going to take this one, and this could probably be a little bit more centered. So take this last one, move it over here. And so, we have a T-shaped layout here. And now I'm going to do the 6. So I should have another row here. I'll take this one, move it over. It doesn't look too centered, so I'll go ahead and move that. And I'll just erase over that one again, holding the Option and Command key down. And then for the last one here. Okay, so now I have all sides of the dice. Okay, now I can save this out. Now I probably don't want the borders on there, so let me go back to my layers. Layers is hiding out down here. And so I'm going to unlock this, and let's just delete that layer. I don't need it anymore. Or actually I can just turn it off. And I'll just save this. So it looks a little strange when you don't see the actual UV outline, but let's go ahead and save that. So now I'm going to save as. And in my images folder, I'm just going to call this dice. And save it as a TIFF file. And it's going to keep the layers. And I don't really have any alpha channels, but we're going to save it and say OK. Let's see if we do. Actually, we do have alpha channels, strangely enough. So we probably want to get rid of these. Actually, don't need these. This extra alpha. Actually, we can just leave it. That's just for the mask, but actually that will that will come through as a transparency, so I'm going to delete that, and let's go ahead and save it again. Okay, so now I can quit Photoshop, and I'll go back into Maya, and we'll go ahead and create a shader for this. So let's go back to the hypershade. So we can close this out. We're done with the UV editor for now. And let's go into the window, rendering editors, and we want the hypershade. Okay, so in the hypershade, we want to create a texture as usual, or a material rather. So we'll create a material first, and we'll just create a fungi for now. And we'll go ahead and change the color. So I'm going to click on that, and I will say File. Click on the Texture tab, go to File, and now I'm going to locate that texture. So I probably should have saved that in source images rather than in images, because that's where it writes the files, and when you read the files you want it from source images. But for now, let's just open it from here, and we'll just say dice. Doesn't matter, it'll still work. And now we can assign this. When we assign this, and we go into our color texture mode here by hitting 5 rather, or 6. So now you can see there's our shaded dice, and that is the basic of how to do the UV texture in Photoshop. So next we'll take a look at how to customize the UV layout.